Hey there, world. Welcome to Reno's World. I'm your host, Reno Reigns, and tonight we're turning up the heat as we dive deep into one of the creepiest legends out there, the Wendigo. We're not just here to recount chilling eyewitness accounts and untangle ancient indigenous tales. We're on a mission to find out whether this legend is true or just a trick of the mind. So buckle up as we explore every spine-tingling detail, uncover the psychological depths, and separate fact from folklore. If you enjoy this ride, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get into it. This is Reno's World, and the truth is waiting to be revealed. In the dim recesses of the northern forests, where shadows stretch into the depths of the human mind, and the line between reality and myth blurs into uncertainty, the legend of the Wendigo whispers through the trees. This investigation, both a psychological journey and a pursuit of historical truth, begins with archival records, first-hand witness statements, and indigenous oral traditions. What emerges is a tapestry of chilling accounts that reverberate with the raw echoes of terror and introspection. Historical roots and indigenous testimonies. Deep in the collective psyche of Algonquian-speaking peoples, the Wendigo is more than a myth. It is a manifestation of the darkest corners of human emotion. Elders recount encounters with this malevolent, cannibalistic spirit as if it were a mirror reflecting the depths of human greed and corruption. An enduring account, passed down through generations, recalls a brutal winter in the early 1700s when a band of hunters succumbed to a mysterious, consuming madness. Samuel Ninepine, a traditional tribal historian, tells us that survivors spoke of an unnatural silence that blanketed the woods and a biting cold that burrowed into the soul, even on nights when the world should have been warm with hope. These narratives, recited in the quiet intimacy of seasonal gatherings, paint the Wendigo as a gaunt specter with eyes burning like dying coals. One elder's voice, heavy with both sorrow and warning, described the creature's presence as the whisper of wind through dead branches, carrying the stench of decay and despair. Though these accounts often lack precise dates or full names, they serve as the foundational memory of a terror that has imprinted itself upon the collective consciousness. Early settler accounts and archival evidence. As European settlers ventured into these wild lands, the haunting legend of the Wendigo began to bleed into documented history. An account from December 12, 1823, found in a now-forgotten Frontier Gazette, tells the story of Elias Murdoch, a lone trapper navigating the perilous Algonquin woods. His diary, rediscovered in the dusty recesses of an upstate New York estate, describes an encounter that still sends shivers down the spine. Murdoch wrote, "I saw it in the periphery of my vision, a creature so pale its eyes glowed with a ghastly light. It moved with a jerky gait as if each step was a battle against some unseen force. I fled, my heart pounding with a terror I cannot convey. In that moment, terror coalesced with the wild, haunting howls and disembodied voices that filled the night. A night later forever marked by the Wendigo's cursed cry." These early records, meticulously preserved in local archives, began to construct an image, an emaciated figure, an otherworldly luminescence in its eyes, and an aura of cold that seemed to defy the natural order of seasons. The chilling encounter of 1868. A particularly vivid account comes from the bitter winter of 1868, narrated by frontiersman William C. Smith. While tracking a herd of caribou near the northern reaches of Ontario, Smith found himself immersed in an unsettling stillness, a silence that felt heavy with foreboding. His memoirs, later quoted in the Northern Sentinel, detail a moment when the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Smith described a figure emerging from behind frost-laden pines. "I froze as I beheld a creature whose eyes bore into my soul, its gaunt face a mask of hunger and despair. I could hear my own heart beating in time with the creature's slow, deliberate steps. In that frozen moment, the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolved. The creature's presence was an intrusive echo of human vulnerability, its pale form stark against the dark winter silhouettes, leaving behind an icy wind that seemed to seep into the very marrow of the observer's being." Modern witness accounts and the echoes of the past. Even as the world modernized, the legend of the Wendigo persisted, echoing the darkest recesses of the human psyche. In November 1974, Eleanor Thompson, a park ranger in the remote forests of northern Minnesota, recounted an encounter that continues to haunt her nights. "I was patrolling an isolated section of the forest when I noticed something odd," Thompson recalled with a tremor in her voice. "At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then I heard a low, mournful moan that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When I turned to look, I saw a figure, tall, gaunt, and with eyes that glowed unnaturally in the moonlight. It was as if the creature was aware of my presence and was beckoning me to join it in its eternal solitude." Thompson's account intertwines psychological terror with a sense of predestination, as though the Wendigo exists not merely as an external threat, but as a mirror reflecting one's innermost fears. The spectral figure, its skeletal visage, its luminous, despairing eyes, and its chilling aura, resonates with a deep, unsettling familiarity. Another modern account surfaced from Houghton in Michigan's Upper Peninsula in March 1982. Local newspaper archives tell the story of John Crowley, a logger who experienced an encounter that blurred the line between human and nightmare. Crowley recalled, "I was driving my truck along a narrow, snow-covered road when I noticed a strange figure on the roadside. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then it moved. No, not like any animal I'd seen. It was human-like, but twisted beyond recognition. I slowed down, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. I could see every detail, the hollow eyes, the emaciated frame, the way it seemed to blend into the darkness. I didn't stop to think. I just drove, faster than I'd ever driven before." This account, though succinct, contributes another layer to a growing archive of evidence, a sequence of experiences marked by a consistent, inexplicable terror. It is as if the very presence of the Wendigo triggers an almost immediate visceral response in those who encounter it, stirring a primal fear buried deep within the human mind. A pattern of dread and the weight of testimony. As I sifted through these accounts, from indigenous oral histories to settler diaries and modern eyewitness reports, a pattern of dread began to crystallize. The consistent portrayal of the Wendigo as a gaunt, skeletal figure with eyes that burn with an eerie luminescence and an aura of inexplicable cold suggests that this entity might be as much a psychological phenomenon as it is a physical one. Witnesses across centuries speak of an overwhelming sense of impending doom, a terror that seems to emerge from the very void between thought and reality. An unnatural silence often precedes its appearance, succeeded by sounds that range from mournful wails to guttural growls that echo the cries of lost souls. Beyond the physical descriptions, what is perhaps most disturbing is the profound psychological impact on those who claim to have seen the Wendigo. Numerous reports describe how encounters with this entity left individuals grappling with insomnia, paranoia, and even a descent into cannibalistic behavior, a condition once labeled Wendigo psychosis. While modern psychology might attribute these manifestations to the effects of isolation and extreme stress, the striking consistency of these accounts forces us to consider whether these are external forces imprinting their terror onto the human psyche or internal demons given form. Archival revelations and unanswered questions. My dive into archival records unearthed letters, diary entries, and newspaper clippings that together sketch a portrait of a phenomenon that is both culturally ingrained and hauntingly persistent. One particularly striking document is a letter dated October 3, 1894, written by a reclusive hunter named Henry Jones. Published posthumously in a local weekly, Jones described how he was haunted by the memory of that pale, relentless figure that seemed to follow me through every shadow. His words evoke not just the terror of a supernatural encounter, but also the psychological torment of a mind unable to escape the specter of its own fears. Each of these fragments, whether it is the whispered warnings of tribal elders, the desperate scribbles in a trapper's diary, or the trembling recollections of a modern park ranger, adds a piece to the puzzle. They compel us to ask, what is the true nature of the Wendigo? Is it a physical entity prowling the forests, or does it exist solely in the realm of the mind, a dark projection of the human condition during moments of isolation and despair? Conclusion of Part 1. This first phase of my investigation has revealed a landscape of evidence filled with both tangible records and the intangible weight of psychological terror. The stories of Elias Murdoch, William C. Smith, Eleanor Thompson, and John Crowley do more than just recount eerie encounters. They plunge us into the realm where myth and mind intertwine. Each account serves as a grim marker along a timeline of fear, reminding us that the human psyche is as capable of conjuring nightmares as any external force. The chilling details, the gaunt form of the creature, its burning eyes, the unnatural silence before its appearance, and the overwhelming dread that follows, are etched into the records and memories of those who have faced it. Whether these manifestations are the products of a shared psychological condition or evidence of a physical horror remains an enigma. In this synthesis of archival documents and first-hand witness testimonies, the Wendigo looms not only as a spectral figure of folklore, but also as a reflection of our own inner darkness. The interplay between historical record and psychological response challenges us to question the nature of reality and the sources of our deepest fears. With every account, the legend deepens, entwining the physical with the psychological, the external and the internal, inviting further investigation into whether this malevolent force is real or if it is simply the ghostly echo of our own shadowed minds. The next phase of this investigation will delve into analyzing these collected accounts, scrutinizing the recurring patterns, and seeking to uncover whether the Wendigo is a flesh and blood entity or merely a haunting projection of the human psyche during moments of profound despair. For now, the evidence is as compelling as it is disturbing, a vivid reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that lurk within us. Analyzing the evidence. In the wake of a century-spanning collection of first-hand accounts, archival diaries, and indigenous testimonies, the question looms large. Is the Wendigo a corporeal being that stalks the frozen woods, or is it a psychological specter, a mirror reflecting our deepest, darkest fears? As an investigative journalist with a keen eye for both factual evidence and the murky depths of the human psyche, I embarked on the second phase of my inquiry, an analytical dive into the evidence to determine whether this fearsome entity is a physical menace or a manifestation of the mind's turmoil. The confluence of history and human psyche. The consistency across disparate accounts is striking. Indigenous oral traditions, settler diaries, and modern eyewitness reports converge on a common image: a gaunt skeletal figure with eyes that burn with an unnatural glow, an aura of bone-chilling cold, and an unmistakable presence that seems to invade the very soul of those who encounter it. Yet, the roots of these descriptions extend beyond simple physical observation. They are steeped in cultural symbolism, ritualistic warnings, and a shared experience of isolation and hardship. Psychologically speaking, the recurring motif of the Wendigo may be understood as a cultural archetype, an embodiment of the fear of isolation, starvation, and the degeneration of the self under extreme conditions. For centuries, the Wendigo has been invoked as a cautionary figure, warning against the moral decay associated with greed and gluttony. In times when survival hung by a thread, these narratives serve not only to explain the unexplainable, but also to enforce social cohesion and ethical conduct within harsh environments. Thus, while many accounts offer vivid sensory details, they also reflect the cultural and emotional context of their tellers. Cognitive dissonance and the hallucination factor. A significant body of modern research into human psychology suggests that extreme stress and isolation can trigger perceptual distortions and even hallucinations. The chilling experiences recounted by early settlers like Elias Murdoch or frontiersmen such as William C. Smith might, in part, be understood through the lens of cognitive dissonance, a state where the mind struggles to reconcile the reality of human vulnerability with the overwhelming forces of nature. In the desolate quiet of the northern forests, the mind can become a canvas for projections of fear, painting nightmares that take on a life of their own. Modern accounts, like those of Eleanor Thompson and John Crowley, continue this trend. Their encounters often occur in settings of intense isolation or during periods of personal stress, where the boundary between reality and imagination is more permeable. The phenomenon known as Wendigo psychosis, a term coined to describe a state of cannibalistic delirium observed among some afflicted individuals in extreme conditions, may well be a clinical manifestation of the terror and isolation that the legend of the Wendigo instills. Such states are not unprecedented in human psychology. They are the natural byproducts of environments that push the limits of endurance and sanity. Analyzing the consistency and variability of witness accounts. When we closely examine the witness testimonies, two themes become apparent: consistency in physical description and variability in the psychological impact. The accounts uniformly describe a figure with skeletal features, an unnerving luminescence in its eyes, and an inexplicable aura of cold. Yet the experiences vary markedly in their emotional and cognitive aftermath. Some witnesses, like the reclusive Henry Jones of 1894, describe an enduring psychological torment, memories that persist and haunt long after the encounter. Others, like the hurried logger John Crowley, offer more immediate, adrenaline-fueled reactions without the lingering dread. This discrepancy raises questions about the nature of memory and perception under duress. Our recollections are often colored by the emotional intensity of the experience. In the case of the Wendigo, the shared motif of overwhelming dread suggests that even if the physical manifestations are subject to misinterpretation or exaggeration, the emotional reality is palpable. In other words, whether or not the creature exists in the physical realm, its impact on the human psyche is undeniable. The consistent imagery across generations points to a deeply rooted symbol, a projection of humanity's collective anxieties about mortality, isolation, and moral decay. Environmental and societal influences. Beyond the individual mind, the cultural and environmental context plays a crucial role in shaping these experiences. The harsh winters of the northern forests, where the Wendigo is said to prowl, create conditions that are ripe for both physical and psychological stress. Extreme cold, dwindling food supplies, and the omnipresent danger of the wilderness all contribute to a heightened state of alertness and anxiety. In such an environment, even natural phenomena, such as the eerie cry of a wolf or the sudden stillness of a snow-laden night, can be misconstrued as supernatural portents. Moreover, the very narrative of the Wendigo has been perpetuated through communal storytelling and folklore, which reinforces the phenomenon across generations. As each new account is told and retold, the legend takes on a life of its own, embedding itself deeper into the cultural consciousness. This self-perpetuating cycle of myth and memory can give rise to what some scholars describe as a collective hallucination, a situation where a community, under similar stressors, begins to experience and report similar phenomena. Whether fueled by shared trauma or environmental hardship, the legend becomes a repository for collective fears, imprinted on both the land and the people who inhabit it. The duality of the Wendigo, physical or psychological. After weighing the evidence, one must confront the duality inherent in the legend of the Wendigo. On one hand, there is a wealth of detailed accounts that suggest a physical manifestation, an entity that is encountered repeatedly, regardless of time or place. On the other, the psychological framework that underpins these experiences points to an internal mental phenomenon born of extreme stress, cultural conditioning, and the human propensity for myth-making. From a scientific standpoint, it is challenging to definitively prove the existence of a physical creature when so much of the evidence is based on personal testimony and anecdotal records. However, the consistency in the descriptions, coupled with the profound psychological effects reported by witnesses, suggests that whether the Wendigo is corporeal or not, it exerts a real and lasting influence on those who believe in it. Its image, as an amalgamation of nature's brutal indifference and the human capacity for fear, is as potent as any creature in folklore. Conclusion: the enduring shadow of the legend. In synthesizing these varied strands of evidence, the analysis leaves us with more questions than definitive answers. The Wendigo, as an archetype, exists both in the realm of physical possibility and as a potent symbol of the human condition. Its repeated appearances across centuries, from the whispered traditions of indigenous peoples to the frantic accounts of modern explorers, underscore a truth that transcends simple categorization. The human mind is as capable of conjuring terror as the natural world is of inspiring awe. Ultimately, the analysis of the evidence suggests that the true power of the Wendigo lies in its dual nature. It is both a physical specter, a possibility born of environmental extremes and misinterpreted natural phenomena, and a psychological emblem reflecting our deepest fears of isolation, moral decay, and the unknown. In this light, the legend of the Wendigo may not be a straightforward account of a monstrous being, but rather a complex interplay between reality and the collective psyche, a reminder that the most formidable monsters are often those that reside within us. The enduring enigma of the Wendigo challenges us to consider the blurred lines between myth and reality, science and folklore. While the evidence may not conclusively prove the existence of a flesh and blood creature, it undeniably demonstrates the profound impact that the legend has had on human consciousness. Whether as an external terror or an internal shadow, the Wendigo continues to haunt the northern woods and the recesses of the mind, a spectral testament to the enduring power of myth in shaping our perceptions of the world. In this final reckoning, the Wendigo remains a formidable symbol, an ever-present reminder that in our darkest moments, the line between reality and nightmare is all too easily blurred. All right, folks, that's a wrap for tonight on Reno's World. I'm your host, Reno Reigns, and thanks for sticking with me as we unravel the chilling mystery of the Wendigo, examining every spine-tingling detail and digging deep to determine if this legend is real or just a figment of our collective imagination. If you enjoyed our deep dive and want to see more investigations into the unknown, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your support fuels our journey into the truth behind the legends. Stay curious, stay brave, and until next time, keep questioning the shadows. This is Reno Reigns signing off from Reno's World.